Hello, everyone. Welcome to another forecast. This is Dr. Claire Moon of Aligning Light Astrology, and we're going to be talking about June, but the second half. So, part two. If you are coming on back, welcome back. If you're new, I do this live twice a month, and it's kind of like whenever I decide, but it's usually a few days before the next chunk. If you want to keep up with my stuff, you can always sign up for my newsletter. That's at www.aligninglightastrology.com/newsletter sign up. And that is below somewhere. So if you want to keep up with when these are and when I have discounts and all of my services and offerings and all of that stuff, that is how you keep up with that. If you are kind of new to me, hello, welcome. I am an astrologer. I do more kind of ancient Hellenistic type of techniques, of course, bringing in modern things as well. And I do readings, I do birth chart readings. I'm currently paused on elections, maybe forever. I'm not so sure about those, but I'm just really focusing on birth chart and forecasting for people, just individual forecastings using various timing techniques. So if you're into transits or solar returns, any of that, I do all that. And more, so much more. What else? I don't think I have any announcements right up front. I'm sure I'll think of some for the end. And I do timestamp these. So if you hang in there for a day or two, I will get the timestamps up and it'll make everything a lot easier. And that'll help us to navigate through time. So here we are. I'm at about a 20-second delay. So if you are here and you're commenting, I'm going to try to keep up with the chat as always, but there is a 20-second delay. Um, we have some familiar faces. Hello, welcome. Yeah, they are penguins. Okay, yeah, thank you for noticing. I was going to put it up front, but then I forgot. So we've got a penguin shirt, and I was like, do I change my shirt or do I lean into it? And then I remembered that I have these penguin earrings that I thrifted when I was like in high school. So they're like 20. I've had it for like 20 years and I'm finally wearing them. Just goes to show hoarding works. All right, just kidding. I'm not much of a hoarder. Actually, I'm trying to be the opposite. Um, all right, but yeah, we got the penguin thing. Somehow this made an outfit. I like laughed out loud. I was like, it works. It works. So thanks for noticing. Yeah, hoot hoot. We're taking a break from the owls. We're doing the penguins this evening. Um, let's look at the sky. We have a beautiful Libra moon right now. We just got done with our monthly opposition to Saturn. Congratulations. If it's been a slow 2.5 days or so, that might have been why. Or frustrating. Sometimes good at problem solving. I've been noticing when the moon is opposite Saturn, it's such a good time to really dig into long-standing issues, long-standing problems. It's a good time to check in with things that are taking a longer time to sort out and need kind of that Virgo detailed kind of process-oriented thing. Like, okay, well, that didn't work, so let's do this. If that doesn't work, let's do this. Very, very Virgo. So we've had that for the last couple days. Helpful, useful, practical. Can be a little frustrating though, especially it depends on who you are. If you are a fast person, then it is. If you're not, like me, I'm kind of slow. I'm like, that's fine. Anyway, okay. So that's going on right now. We just got done with that. Now we have a Libra moon. That's what's going on right now. And I think maybe this is a good segue to our list of dates, our list of events for the next 2 weeks. I'm just going to do all of June because we can look back a little bit too and see what we have gone through this month so far. We've got we had Mercury entering Gemini on the 3rd of June. Then we had our Venus Cazimi on the 4th of June. That Venus Cazimi stretched to like pretty much that whole week if we count it being within 1 degree. So pretty much the first week of June, Venus Cazimi. On the 6th, we had a Gemini new moon. Then on the second week of June, we started to see Jupiter rising in the morning sky. I have been not a great sky watcher and I haven't even been out there. I have been asleep. So don't ask me about the actual sky. I feel bad. I'm trying to do better. And then we just had Mars enter Taurus on the 8th. Mercury Cazimi is happening today, right now. So that's where we're going to start our talk today is with Mercury Sun conjunction. Then on the 17th, in just a few days, we're going to have Mercury and Venus entering Cancer together. On the 20th, the Sun is going to enter Cancer and join them. On the 22nd, the Moon is going to land on the opposite end of things and give us a full moon in Capricorn. And then at the end of the month, on the 28th, Mercury is going to start, depending on where you are, to be visible in the evening sky after the sun sets. Um, Something that's already going on, but it happens is Saturn stationing retrograde on the 29th of June. But that's, I mean, that's already pretty much we're in it. We're in that station because those planets that move slower, they spend a while stationing. So let's actually look at that right now just to show you what I mean while we're talking about it. If you can see Saturn down here, uh, and we look just over the last, yeah, I'm going to go day by day. Oh, well, now I got to get rid of my scribbles. Sorry, y'all. All right. So like let's go back to like end of May. So a couple weeks ago, we have Saturn at 18 degrees of Pisces, 18 degrees some mark minutes. If we watch them just over the days, I mean, they're at 18, 18, 18, and then we get to June 7th. I mean, so a whole week later, then we get Saturn moving a degree. And I mean, they're usually going very slow, but now we're seeing that they're really slowing down at 19. And that's where they'll station. So they're going to be just hanging out at 19 here for, I mean, let's look. God, this is such a great illustration. So until July 22nd, that's wild. That's 5 weeks. That's 5 weeks from now. 6 weeks if we count the week that they've already been at 19 degrees. So Saturn is going to spend about 6 weeks at 19 degrees of Pisces, it appears, from around the beginning of June to middle end of July. So in that time, Saturn is really slowing down, stopping, and then they start to move backwards. But even once they start moving backwards, it takes them a while to pick up speed again in their retrograde motion. So yeah, they're going to be camped out at 19. So for all of you who have Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, if you have points, planets, angles, anything in there that's important to you, especially if it's around that 19-degree thing, and especially within 3 degrees, that is going to be, you'll be noticing it more. One way that I've heard my teacher Chris talk about it is like you're hitting a note on a piano, like one key, just over and over and over and over again. So it's like, okay, Saturn, we get it. So, what might be louder about Saturn that already is and will continue to be throughout the month of June? I mean, more neutrally, we can just look at the Saturn ruled parts of the chart. So for like this theoretical Sagittarius rising, this would be their second house topics and third house topics. So maybe topics of money would be louder for them during this time. Maybe topics of third house people, places, things, familiar people, places, things, neighbors, neighborhoods. And maybe even the Sagittarius rising's fourth house, where Saturn is probably very much the fourth house as well for them. Home, family, parents, private life. So those are all options for when Saturn is stationing, what gets louder. And then also just Saturn's significations on their own might get louder. So delays, barriers, obstacles, limitations, constrictions, but also discipline, maturity, wisdom, experience, help from ancient things. I'm going to be getting a dehumidifier over the next couple weeks. And for me, I mean, that's in my second house of money. But yeah, I'm going to be doing Saturn things like putting barriers and containing the water in my basement. So, what Saturn things are going to be loud over the next, I guess, the next 5 weeks? Just, think about that. And if it's bothering you, if you're like, wow, I wish it wouldn't be loud, then the good news for you is that it won't be if you can just hang in there for 5 weeks. Things will start to maybe settle into a new pattern, settle into a new rhythm, or maybe the obstacles will be less loud. Um, Long-standing challenges won't be so in front of our face. And I hope what that means, like sometimes if these Saturnian long-standing challenges are really in our face and loud, sometimes that means that we're actually dealing with them, we're confronting them, we're working through them. And then by the time Saturn starts to pick up speed again, going in the other direction or whatever the direction they're going in, but they're picking up speed, then hopefully their influence then will get less loud. That's the idea, at least. So we shall watch that. But that is something that, again, has been in the past and is going to continue for the rest of the month. But really, that it is the last event that we have technically on the 29th of June. And then they station direct again on November 15th. So every year they are retrograde Saturn for about 4 months. And I'm usually watching it more around the station. So for instance, we're watching more June, July. So we will be watching more end of October through November than for the next station, for the next time these similar topics get louder. And so this will be a way too of kind of tracking what Saturn is doing here over the next 6 months to a year. So yeah, write in your journals. Ugh, yeah, a little aside, I was writing in my journal before this, and I hadn't since October of 2022. So I'm always telling all my clients and everyone, oh, journal, it's what you gotta do. Because that's how we keep track of things. And it's not that I haven't been journaling at all, but like I have what I call my listoir, where like I'll show you, like it's in my pile of stuff. It's a mess. It's chaos. It's a mess, but it's like I have my tarot. I like do my tarot in there and the I Ching. I'll write whatever, you know, divinations. It's a divination journal, basically. I've kind of usurped my regular journaling for my divination journaling. And then I'll like write in the margins like outcomes. And so that has become my way of like kind of tracking what's going on with my life. But it is 100% chaotic and a nightmare to read back if I'm trying to look for stuff. So I'm like, I gotta do it. But the reason I was avoiding it was because I had to go back over like some tough stuff if I wanted to be a completionist about it and like actually like document like, all right, what the fuck happened like these months of, since then. But I'm happy to say I made it through the tough parts and now I get to talk about all the fun shit that I've been doing. Well, there's been some other hard stuff too if you've been following me or you know me a little bit more closely, but overall it's been a big improvement. So yeah, why did I start talking about that? Because especially with longer things like this, when we're like trying to track like what Saturn is doing in our lives or what they're reflecting or what goes on when Saturn stations, I think this is where we really do have to rely on journaling for that kind of long view approach. Okay. Anyway, I digress. We had our dates of interest. So I guess while uh, we're in the chat here, and holy wowza, is there ever a beautiful chat? Thanks, everybody. Look at it. Everyone's talking. It's fun. Hi, Reverend Kai. Hi, Christina. Hello. Amazing. Does anyone, so I guess that first week of June, we had that Venus Cazimi. So that's maybe like the one reflection point. There's a few reflection points. I'm gonna go over two. I want to talk about that Venus Cazimi that we had. For those of you who are uh, hanging out with me, what was it? It was my last forecast. I did like a very depressing, like death related meditation about like relationship and dying and stuff like that. So that was kind of the vibe when we have a superior conjunction of Venus with the sun, when Venus is as far away from the Earth as they can get. Um, yeah, it's not always like the roses and puppies and kittens, nice part of Venus. Sometimes we're having these kind of stark realizations about relationship and stuff like that. Uh, but in any event, when was that? That was like the 4th, that it really was on June 4th. So any insights we might have had about relationship, insights about love, beauty, romance, fairness, justice, peace, harmony, our values, like what we really value. Sometimes I think that can come out in our priorities. Priorities, I mean, there's a mixture there. They're made of kind of what's purposeful, meaningful, what motivates us, what we value. But Venus really can speak to like, what do we value? And the sun's conjunction with a planet, like today, we're having one with Mercury in the sun. We just got done with Venus in the sun. So it's not very often that we get two of these right next to each other like this. Uh, what clarity might you have had around Venus or Venus ruled topics? Now, today it's more what are we having clarity around Mercury or Mercury ruled topics? But yeah, for me, it was very happily finding out that like several loved ones had the health diagnosis that you want and not the ones that you don't. So they weren't sick, or at least not in any kind of terminal sense, ill, but not terminally. And so that was my Venus Cazimi. I was like, yay, I get to continue this relationship. But it was very depressing. So, again, and it can kind of be that way sometimes, depending on who you are. But it can also be like very like Esther Perel, like, wow, relationship. Wow, I get it. Wow, I get the download about the relationship stuff. So it can be that just kind of pure like clarification of certain relationship things. So yeah, I don't know. That stuff can get kind of tenderoni, but if anyone has any anecdotes they want to share here now or later, if you're listening to this in the comments, I'm always curious to see what like the transits are actually doing or showing up as in people's lives. Um, yeah. Mwah, mwah. All right. So then the other thing I wanted to talk about was the Mars-Pluto square that we had heating up that it's now passed. So over the first couple weeks of June, we had Mars approaching Pluto by square, which can be just intensity, intense moments, really maybe pressurized moments, either because they're really important to you or you're putting in a lot of like, it's like kind of that, I always use the phrase moving mountains, like that type of energy, just such a powerful amount of energy when we put Mars and Pluto together. And then when I think of a square, being of the nature of Mars, squares are, putting in effort, pivoting, adjusting, it's friction and tension, but it can be, because we're pivot when, it can be kind of chicken versus egg. Is there tension that's causing me to pivot and change and transform? Or is it like the pivoting and changing and transforming that is causing the tension? Or is it all of them or none of them? I don't know, but it's all very martial. And we can get just a lot of mileage, I think. Like this first week of June, I got more done than I've gotten done in a while. Granted, it was in my third house where I'm doing all my little short distance travel things. But look to where Aries is in your chart and the house topics there. Maybe if you're the Sagittarius rising, you were busy putting effort into your love life or effort into your rest. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like bad. It can be like really constructive. That being said, I mean, again, like the things that I was dealing with were very intense and kind of heavy ways. And they got pinged, if we want to look back to that would have been around like, say, like June 2nd when the moon was with Mars and the moon was running into this square with Pluto. So that would have been a ping on like the first couple days of June, June 2nd, June 3rd. And then the second one really happening more like on the 8th and 9th of June when the moon was coming into a T square with those same planets again. And so if your timeline of things, over the first couple weeks of June fell along this, that might have been the Mars-Pluto square. One of the news stories that came up that was, I don't usually do news stories. That's not what I do here. I'm not like one of those forecasting astrologers. However, one thing did come up with this story about it was in Oregon and there was a rodeo and a bull jumped over the fence and like 5 people got very injured. And when was that? That was the T square. And it was right when Mars was about to go into Taurus. So we were really seeing the strength of that Mars ingress. Anytime a planet goes into a new sign, and this is, I think, regardless of what aspects it's having by degree, I think we can see that just the loudness of that planet. And of course, it was a bull. Taurus had to be. And the bull's name was Party Bus, which I thought was hilarious. So, what a party. All right. So that's what we get when we get T squares with Mars and Pluto. And then the moon goes around and pings it a bunch. And actually, today we had, or no, not today. It's coming up here. So now let's watch again. And I don't think this one's going to be as intense as the last two. Yeah, this is actually a good segue. This is a perfect segue. I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but being we're talking about it, we're talking about the moon hitting these square points along this journey with Pluto and Mars. Now we're hitting kind of the last one of these. But now Mars is no longer in an overcoming square from the moon like it was up here in Cancer Leo. Now it's in an opposition, which is not, Mars can do way more damage in an overcoming square than it can in an opposition usually. And also there's kind of a mixed mutual reception here, which is a fancy word for saying that these planets are in each other's places where it's either their home or their vacation home. So like, or no, that's not, no, it's, sorry, I'm so sorry. It's mutual reception, but like they're both in foreign countries. Sorry, because they're in fall. They're not, I was thinking moon in Taurus, Mars in Scorpio, and flip-flopped. This is a mutual, kind of mixed mutual reception, but insofar as they're in places where they don't like to be. Moon generally struggles to be resourced in Scorpio. Mars likewise has a hard time being resourced in Taurus. The moon looks over at Mars and Taurus and says, "Hey, you're in my house." And Mars looks over at the moon and says, "Hey, you're in my house. What are you doing there?" And sorry, the moon has exaltation in Taurus, not domicile. I'm all over the map on this one. You're following me if you're a nerd. If you're not a nerd, I'm really sorry. This is a mess. But in any event, it reminds me of like these two planets. They're both on the nighttime team. They're sympathetic to each other. Mars and the moon want to help each other in this interaction. They want to take their house topics and work them together somehow. They're both on the nighttime team. But again, they're not very resourced. And it's like being like, imagine you and your best friend are in foreign countries, different foreign countries, and you can't help each other out at all. You're like, I would love to send you some money. Can't do it though. Really struggling over here. The other person's like, hey, I would love to help you out with wherever you are, but I don't speak that language. But what you can do is send each other memes and you can send each other encouragement or you can send each other notes. And I know that we don't normally think of like Moon and Mars as on the same team, but if I'm doing this Hellenistically, I'm like, well, they're both on the same sect, they're both nighttime nocturnal planets. They're both in their kind of nighttime nocturnal signs. I do think we can get some constructivity out of these couple days where we have the moon in Scorpio and Mars in Taurus. But it is, again, it's some of that intense energy. It's some of the high impact or high pressure situations that maybe we've felt a couple times this month. But I think the main headline in that whole jumbled mess that I just tried to parse out, the headline there is that this is much more constructive than I think we had with the Leo moon and the previous one. It looks more functional. It doesn't look like party bus jumping into a crowd of people. Yeah, there's that. There's that segue. Let's actually dial it back though, just a second here and start right now. Right now on the 14th, we are having a Mercury Cazimi. And if I go to my notey notes, all right, so it started this morning, 6:25 approximately in the morning, 6:27 in the morning Central Time. Uh, that's when the medieval Cazimi within 16 arc minutes began. So if you are out there doing astrological magic, if you are using this for any kind of very specific purposes, sorry. I think I did say this in the last one, so hopefully I caught the astrological magic people, but it ended at 4:27 p.m. So just ended Central Time. But after this, we still have Mercury within 1 degree, and that doesn't end until the 15th, tomorrow. So that's at about 7 in the morning Central Time is when the Hellenistic within 1 degree Mercury Cazimi ends. So if you are maybe not much of a medieval astrologer and more of a Hellenistic one, then you still have time. You still have time. That's why tonight I'm going to continue to journal. I'm going to continue to do my Mercury Cazimi thingies because I think we still have some time. But that's what's going on right now. And this also marks the middle point of Mercury's journey with the sun. So the Mercury is always kind of going back and forth through the sun forward, and then they station retrograde and they go backward, and they do this dance with the sun all the time. They do it 3 times a year. And this conjunction, when Mercury is direct, marks the middle of its journey with the sun. So if you want to look at Mercury ruled things in your chart, maybe the Virgo house topics, the Gemini house topics. Maybe you're getting insight on those things today, like this Sagittarius rising person, maybe about their career, life path, maybe about their partnerships. Maybe it's clarity about those topics. Maybe it's just about things like communication, travel, buying, selling, other mercurial things, thinking, planning. Just having good old smart thoughts today. And I think that's mostly what was going on today. We had a nice little trine between Pluto, Moon, and Jupiter. Moon is currently in a nice little benefic enclosure between, just got done with the square with Venus, and it's moving into a trine with Jupiter. So I didn't intend to do this during a benefic enclosure of the moon, but I accidentally did. So that's great. On the other side, and when the moon is between the rays of Venus and Jupiter, it's kind of this nice little window where usually the stuff that we do will turn out somewhat decently. It's a good time to do things when the moon is getting rays from Venus and Jupiter. But if I want to bring in the outer planets for a minute, we do have some stuff to contend with in this last little part of Gemini. All of these planets have to move past a square with Neptune. And I imagine that this square, I mean, remember, this can just be effort, putting in effort, making changes to stuff, making adjustments to things. And maybe these things and stuff that we're working with are like spiritual, artistic in nature, creative in nature. I mean, this is just such a beautiful combo of having like the Lord of music, the Lord of art, the Lord of words and beauty. So like, yeah, writing, creating beautiful things, you know, and just Neptune bringing in that ephemeral, more spiritual quality. And I feel like Neptune is just like glue. It helps to dissolve boundaries and barriers. And if it's doing that with Venus and Mercury, then it just ends up being this beautiful like soup where you can like not only have beautiful Venus stuff, but then Mercury stuff, and it's all kind of melding together in a cool way. I feel like Neptune does that. And it's like extra fuel for creativity, really. I think it's that it can reflect that decreased inhibition that we can have when the creative juices are really flowing. So, you know, June 14th, June 15th, 16th, as these planets are with Neptune in square, it's a good time to brainstorm stuff. If you need to just get things down onto paper, you can edit it later. You can kind of shape it and form it later, but it's really good brainstorm energy. And of course, Jupiter is here, and that's just helpful to then bring meaning, purpose, coalescing energy to that. Like it's not just any old soup of art or music. It's one that's very purposeful and meaningful to you. So I love this combination. But of course, with Neptune, We have to talk about its influence on the material realm, which is like of money and commerce and travel and plans and talking and having it make sense to people. So we want to make sure that I would say June 14th, if we're being like more, I guess, small about it, I would say June 14th through the 17th, maybe 18th. That'll get Mercury and Venus away from this square with Neptune, where we can see deception, miscommunication, confusion, uncertainty, fog, blah. Don't love it for those reasons. Um, two of our three planets get out of that by the 18th. But if we want to wait for the sun, then this week of over communicating when it comes to material world boring stuff, over communicating, double crossing your T's and dotting your I's, reading the fine print, watching out for omissions, watching out for, grifters, anyone who's trying to, I don't know, pull a fast one on you, not to make you paranoid. But that's what we want to watch out for with a square with Neptune, because again, we're getting that kind of tension, discord, potential strife of Mars conflict with uncertainty, confusion. So, especially if we're feeling like tense or frustrated or, just tense or frustrated around things where there might be misunderstanding, miscommunication. That's the recipe a bit between June 14th and June 20th. So let's all for the next week just over communicate and give each other the benefit of the doubt. That's what I'm doing. So, especially right now, I guess today, I know we have Mercury in kind of this protected little shell today with the Cazimi. It is a very special place. Oh, correct pronunciation just dropped. Wake up, babe. I've been saying encardios wrong for like 2 years. Sorry, I'm trying to hold on. I've been saying this word, this Greek word wrong for like 2 years. Encardios, in the heart of the sun, in the heart of it. Encardios. That's what Mercury and Sun is doing. We got the right pronunciation on. This just goes to show, friends, we can all do our best. And you're gonna find out you're doing so wrong and it's okay. But in any event, after after Mercury leaves the heart of the sun, there's nothing protecting them from Neptune. And I guess one thing that is protecting Mercury from deception, confusion, misunderstanding is the fact that Mercury themselves is very, very strong. They're in their own sign. They are able to get the details, ask the questions. So I think that's going to be a really good antidote for this too, is how do we use the strengths of Mercury here in asking really good questions, asking clarifying questions, compassionate curiosity, all of that to help kind of navigate any twisty, windy things that Neptune might throw our way. So, okay. I think that's it for that Neptune business. Like I said, on the 15th, we're going to get that Hellenistic Mercury Cazimi ending. Mercury is still, they're protected from the sun's beams because they're in their own sign. And so this is kind of last call too. I mean, okay, we are dealing with the Neptune square. That does add, that kind of ruins it a little bit. I'm just going to be frank, because usually what I would say, if we're going to just ignore that Neptune exists for just a second, I would say this is last call to squeeze the juice out of strong Mercury, strong analytical, intellectual, fact-driven, making spreadsheets, getting data, Mercury, traveling, going to the place, asking the person, Mercury. That's what they do. So speaking, communicating, thinking, listening, planning, all that. Really good. Really good for another 2-3 days. And then, not to say that people with Mercury and Cancer aren't good at Mercury things. Of course they are. Of course they're good at analyzing and thinking and planning and listening, especially listening. Mercury Cancers are so good at listening. Cancer Mercuries, I should say. Um, but if we're just going by the domicile rulership scheme and resourcing and that whole discussion, yeah, right now we're getting the best out of Mercury that we're gonna get for a little while. So yeah, squeeze the juice out of that last call there. On the 16th, Moon is gonna hit an opposition with Chiron, and that yeah, it's funny because I'm not usually bringing too much of the asteroid stuff into my work. I do use the asteroids personally. I like them very much, but like the asteroid goddesses and stuff. Uh, but boy, Chiron, they just seem to be so loud as an asteroid. So I do like to talk about them. And I mean, for what it's worth, like I know the moon has to pass through the south node on the 15th. Uh, they have to pass over this opposition with Chiron. But at the same time, they're getting this beautiful trine, this overcoming trine. Like by sign, the moon is being bonified by two benefics, both Jupiter and Venus. And, pretty much today, hold up, let's go by the day. And I know that there's like, okay, I know that there's the drawy things where I can draw and it'll like, the mark will go away. Like right away, it'll fade, but it goes away too fast. I need to figure out how to make it fade less quickly. Otherwise, I'd use that. I know it's kind of annoying. But yeah, here, the moon just on the 14th, moon just got into Libra. It's going to be in here for the next 2-3 days, 2.5 days. And during that time, the moon is also not in any kind of aspect with the malefics. So I was kind of looking forward to June 14th, 15th, and 16th, a little bit of 16th, as more of a lighter set of days. I know we got to deal with Moon and South Node, but just a lighter set of days, just with that basic kind of who can see the moon on these days. Um, so yeah, looking forward to it. On the 16th, okay, yeah, this is where we have a little caveat, and this is where the things change. Because then as the moon gets to the end of this trine with the benefics, then it is going to enter into, and now we're right back where we were before when I was talking about that T-square with Mars and Pluto. And so that is how we enter into the 17th. Um, Again, I think, 17th, 18th can be some constructive, productive days. Might have a lot of energy to move forward on some projects. I know we don't generally think of like the fixed signs as like initiation energy, of course, like to begin. But boy, if you have some projects going, they are so good at just putting in that consistent effort, when I think about Mars and Taurus, I know that it's not the matching, the congruency is not always there insofar as Mars wants to go fast, Taurus likes to go slow. Mars is fire, Taurus is earth. One is cardinal, one is fixed. We've got, even their lords, Mars and Venus. Two of a duality pair, though. Like Mars and Venus, it's hard to separate them sometimes. It's like you kind of need both for things to work. And when you get Mars in Taurus, and I think Venus can work in Scorpio in some similar ways, like the ability to stay with something, to just continue to cultivate it. Like with Mars, our efforts, our motivation, our actions, and then done in a fixed manner, consistently, stably, maybe slowly, which might be very frustrating, but it's not like nothing's getting done. And it can be hard to get started. I think a lot of fixed signs just in general might have a hard time getting started sometimes. But once you get going, if you can just get going, that's usually what is needed. And then you're just gonna, have so much forward momentum, hopefully, even if the pacing is a little here and there. Mercury and Venus are together too, and I really haven't mentioned that. I haven't talked about that enough yet. Well, I did a little bit when I was talking about the Neptune square with Venus and Mercury. Venus and Mercury together are, again, just so creative, artistic, and it's kind of putting together the best of our relating and our communicating faculties. So the ability to, I mean, whether you're doing a lot of cognitive labor, thinking work with creating something, or whether you are just very busy being a social butterfly right now, both of those things could be going on and they're great. I think they're awesome. And they're going to really be together for quite some time. And right now we're getting this kind of frenetic, energetic, like I think of Gemini. Gemini is like this ever proliferating, ever bifurcating and splitting off and growing. And, it's air. Air is always going to fill whatever vessel you put it in. Um, that's what air does. That's the energy of the creativity right now. Once these two get into water, the energy of the creativity is still there. It's still like all of this poetry and whatever, Mercury and Venus are doing, making beautiful music, doing beautiful things with your hands, crochet, knitting. Geez, so many options. It gets watery though. It gets a little different. And maybe we start to put that energy into something where we really focus on it. Because I think too we think about the decans of Gemini and this last part of Gemini being a place where Austin Coppock talks about having to make hard choices. Yeah, I see it all the time. Hard choices abound, but then whoever or whatever project or relationship or whatever is going on, whatever we really choose to focus on, then we can put all of our care and nourishment into those things or projects or people or whatever, when these planets get into Cancer on the 17th. But it shifts and it's slower. It's a slower pace in a water nighttime sign. It's more internal. It's not as loud. It's not as externalizing. So it is definitely like look at what you want out of those two energies and kind of plan accordingly. Do you want to put more of your creative efforts into the next few days, or would it work better for you if you were putting more of that creative energy, into the soupy things in a few days? Or maybe probably all of us, it's a both and, because it's Gemini season. And like, I can't help it. I say both and so much during Gemini season, and I try not to, but you can't help it because it's Gemini season. That's what they do. That's why it's hard. If it's hard to hold space for things that don't seem like they can all go together. But I think Venus is going to try. And so the vibe shift on the 17th, it happens. Venus enters Cancer at 1:20 in the morning Central Time, so very wee hours on the 17th. So if you're in like the very global west, like if you're in Hawaii right now, it actually is going to be at the end of the 16th that Venus will enter into Cancer. And then at 11:50, that'll be so Venus enters Cancer at 1:20 in the morning Central Time on the 17th, 11:50 in the morning India Standard Time on the 17th, and Venus enters Cancer at 4:20 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the 17th. So into the afternoon. Now, Mercury is going to enter Cancer a few hours later. So little less than 3 hours later at 4:06 a.m. Central Time, Mercury enters Cancer at 2:36 p.m. India Standard Time and at 7:06 p.m. Australia Eastern Time. This sets up basically, I'm gonna draw a little bit more, but I think I need to get the complicated wheel up first. Okay. So this is interesting because Mercury, okay, I know they're going to lose their domicile ship, but they do have, they have the second decan and the third bound, and Venus, as soon as Venus gets in, they're in their own decan here and pretty quickly in their own bound. And so if we move this forward a few days, we're actually going to get kind of a fun period of time. I'm very curious to see what this will bring about, because theoretically, Mercury and Venus should be functioning even better when they're in their own bound or in their own term. And we get kind of the best of both worlds, like around July, or sorry, around June, like 23rd, 24th-ish. Um, so it's not like when Mercury leaves Gemini that they're totally, out of their element in Cancer. Even some places in Cancer, Mercury can be extremely effective at doing all the detailed, dry, analytical, rational Mercury stuff. But now they might be doing it, with um, very caring, nurturing things. So I can imagine someone who can like wrap a wound really delicately and gently and like or like they're trying to like cheer up a child and they make origami, or there's so many ways where like dexterity and tiny detail goes into caring and nurturing activities. Like when I'm weeding my garden, and I'm just all these little tiny little guys everywhere. I got to pull out. That feels very Mercury and Cancer. I am like, and like looking at like a graph to see like which of the leaves on the tomato plant I'm allowed to take off or not, because they take too much energy from the rest of the plant. That's some Mercury and Cancer stuff right there, right? Um, God, that's also some Mars and Taurus stuff too. Cutting off things from plants in the garden. So all to say, you know, still got plenty to get out of Mercury, even after they leave Gemini. And I should stop there because little digression. I use that language sometimes. Like I get very utilitarian in my language because my Mercury is in Capricorn. And I realized that it can be a little like kind of crass, being like, oh, what can we get out of Mercury? What can we get out of blah? Um, Also, like my true beliefs and feelings and opinions on it is that we're here to just kind of watch and see what's reflected and like use that information to help us. I'm not always here to be getting stuff out of planets, but my language will go that way sometimes, just so we know we're clear. I'm not here to exploit planetary deities or anything. Um, Not even sure. Jury's still out on all that for me personally. But I gotta say it because I don't want to. I can understand the sensibilities and I don't want to offend anyone. Okay, so we know now on the 17th, Mercury and Venus are going to go into Cancer. It's all of that kind of awareness of mortality and all of the tending and the gentleness that needs to happen when something is growing, whether that's a project, a person, a baby, a sprout. Um, and I think that there is a bit of more focusing that happens in Cancer than happens in Gemini. So that's going to be a shift. And it is a bit quieter, slower in energy. So, Venus being in Gemini versus Venus in Cancer, Venus in Gemini might want to be really conversant and talk with a bunch of people and have, all kinds of events and meetings with people um, for all kinds of reasons. Venus in Cancer, it's usually more quantity over quality. And it's, more of those familiar bonds of people. So maybe more intimate types of friend gatherings with familiar people you know very well versus all of the exciting pollination that can happen when we're like meeting new people and having all kinds of, interactions with different people who maybe aren't that familiar. So yeah, definitely a vibe shift. Before I go any further, I'm going to check in with the chat here. All right. Thank you for saying good luck with my basement. I think it's going to be great. I think the basement is going to be so comfortable. Very excited. Okay, we got some power control issues with, yeah, partnership, relationship. And like that can come in, like there's just such a broad spectrum of ways, big and small, that we can kind of see stuff like that come in. And I think it's so important and so difficult for me personally to like address all of those things like when they come up. Um, it's very hard. I know, I think this is from Thich Nhat Hanh and his like Plum Village teachings, but and I think this is partly just like how things operate in certain monasteries, but if there's like a difficulty in relationship or a discord in relationship, ideally you should talk to the person about it within a day And I'm like, wow, that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot of my fixed planets and 12th house planets. But I will try to, yeah. So good job. And, too, I mean, so teaching people to fish, when like the moon, Mercury, Venus, when those types of planets, which, I mean, I guess, what have we had going on here recently? Pluto has been here. I do think like Venus and Jupiter in a trine with Pluto, that's some helpful energy. I think when we're trying to work with like really entrenched patterns, I just think about Pluto. I kind of started in this because thinking about like control or imbalances in power or just power differentials. But working with those things, a lot of that it has to do with habituated patterns that come from all kinds of conditioning that we can have so much compassion for, but we do have to work with those patterns sometimes to change. And I think that when Jupiter and Venus are in a good relationship with Pluto, it can help us work with those things with others, because we've got, goodwill helping us through the power difficulties. We've got Venus helping us relationally move through those power difficulties. And we've had and will continue to have Mercury move through those things, putting words to it or thoughts or helping us really untangle complexity or untangle some really complex heartstrings. Now, of course, Mars has been here adding all of that tension and potential conflict, which that is not helpful. That's kind of the opposite energy of what I want when I'm trying to work with like some difficult, heavy, especially relational stuff. I don't love working with it when Mars is in that square. But right now, being that Mars is now out of that square, or at least by degree, I should say, and we still have some of this by sign and by degree Jupiter trine interaction with Pluto, that's somewhat helpful. So, and maybe, one way of thinking about this too is if there has been some discord with the Mars-Pluto square, I think that the benefics, Venus, Jupiter here shining a trine here to Pluto, that's maybe been a little bubble wrap, I guess. Bull in Oregon run into a rodeo crowd. I don't think anyone died though. But not to be dismissive of injuries, but yeah, hopefully some bubble wrap from those benefics in this situation. So yeah, and it's like, yeah, this is why we use astrology. We want to know when the wind is at our back to deal with stuff to make it easier, because life is really hard. So it's like, yeah, sailing is difficult. It's good to know when the weather is good. Um, ooh, okay. Someone's having some material challenges, broken laptops, broken glass. Not good. Nope. And that is intense. Even just those moments can just be really intense. And that can be what the whole transit is just that moment of intensity. Um, oh no, direct hits all year for you. Okay. Yeah. And mm, I've got some, it's like, I was so happy to get it out of cardinal signs. Pluto is out of the cardinal signs. It's like, yes, you can get it off my sun, get it off my Mercury. Um, but then it ends into I got fixed stuff, I got mutable stuff. There's no escaping. Some of us, it's like if you have a lot of stuff in your birth chart and it's like in the cardinal signs and the fixed signs and the mutable signs, it's like, yeah, like hits all year sometimes. It's like, when will it end? It's coming from all different angles. So good luck. We have to embrace the Uranus opposition. It is time and time again. And like this goes to like it depends on so many conditions in life and the amount of privilege that we have and uh just the circumstances we find ourselves in. But um the folks with Uranus and Scorpio, y'all are having your Uranus oppositions, and your Uranus opposition happens mid 40s. It with some other things is midlife crisis-y transits. Uh, and what I find is that people who go into this period of time, so like by the time you're getting into your late 30s, early 40s, and this is not going to work every time. This is a generalization, so this might not be you. But what I often find is people who go into that mid 40s period of time and they have a lot of freedom a lot of space, a lot of Uranus. They have a lot of freedom to be their authentic self. They can do whatever they want. They're not like, like I can imagine people who by the time they're in their early 40s, they've gotten at a really high position at their job and they can't just quit. Kind of too big to fail energy with some people's lives out there. Uh, and that can be really constricting and limiting. And then we get our Uranus opposition to natal Uranus. And it's like we just want room to be and exist and be different and try things and experiment and do things. And so the better you can get yourself set up, late 30s into early 40s to like be living the authentic life as the authentic you freely and whatever, then usually it's not gonna, do the stereotypical midlife crisis thing. You will just be living your life and doing different things, and it won't be like ruining anything. Some people, like it's just fate and stuff blows up and happens. I just see that too. And then there's this other group of people where it's like, for whatever reason, they're just living a very like limited, constricted type of existence. And this comes along, this Uranus opposition, and it gets hard. Like it is like not a good time. And in my mind, I'm thinking of like a common sad thing under patriarchy with misogyny is the classic parent who is like not able to be themselves in their marriage or not able to be themselves because they've got really little children and they're really like in the brunt of raising little kids or they're taking care of ailing parents. And that is like a really constricting thing that we don't always have control over. It's like, yeah, usually we don't want to go live with our parents, but we do. So there's so much stuff that can happen that's just normal part of life that can be that very limiting and constricting thing that then by the time we get to our mid 40s, it's like, oh yeah, I am feeling the limitation and the constriction and I would like some space and freedom. And that's not always the context. So yeah, if you're like, it depends on the context every time. But and so many of those things we don't always have control over, right? But I think then it makes it all the more important, again, late 30s into early 40s, the more you can just lean into your authentic ass self and the best life for you, like that's going to help. Okay. I did not intend to go on that sermonette. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the inspiration in the chat. It's really great. I love talking about it. Oh my gosh, Mercury Cazimi reworking of budgets. Yes, yes, absolutely. I had a similar kind of thing. It's like because I have Mercury rules my eighth. So yeah, there's been some shifts there happening, clarity around some things and kind of reprioritization and being like, yeah, that's what needs to happen next. And yeah, just feeling more clarity, I think, around my eighth house, complex finances and stuff. All right. Oh, we got someone who's in their early 40s. I don't know. I mean, gal, it depends on how Capricorn I'm feeling today or how Pisces I'm feeling today. Sometimes I'm like, we have all the time in the world. All the rules are made up. The points don't matter, et cetera, et cetera. And then like, other times I'm like, you could die at any moment. Memento mori. Like, like I have no time. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with both of those things. And I oscillate wildly between them all the time. All right, let's get back to it. So planets are going into Cancer. Hot dog. And then on the 20th, the sun is going to move into Cancer. Let me go to my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything. There is eh, it's kind of a malefic enclosure. Depends on who you ask. Well, technically, it's a soft one. So on actually the 17th into the 18th, sorry. When the moon gets to 6 degrees of Scorpio, the moon will be applying, oops, the moon will be applying to a trine with Saturn after having had an opposition with Mars. So, again, like right now, the moon is in between the rays of both of the stabilizing planets. And here, the moon is going to be between both of the planets that have to do with extremes. It's not as temperate or stable. It's more extreme energies, and that can sometimes be a little uncomfortable. But a trine with Saturn, I don't mind them. I think it's usually pretty constructive for the most part. Can see, see realities. We can see the barriers. We can see the delays. We can try to work around them. It can be illuminating. But it's not an opposition with Saturn. So yes, there is a malefic enclosure of the moon on the 17th and the 18th, but it's not a big one on my radar to prioritize. On the 19th, yeah, I guess last thing for just like we mentioned before, the sun is the last planet to go in this square with Neptune. Um, Great day to clean the altar, great day to clean the altar in your heart, whatever that means. Forgive yourself. Be really kind and considerate because to yourself, because the sun has been going through a gauntlet. For those of you who are familiar with the tarot and the swords, it's a lot of thoughts that can happen in Gemini. And the swords in the tarot deck really, really, I think, illustrate it in that this is the 8 and 9 and 10 of swords. So it's like, all the most thinky of thoughts that we're thinking. And so maybe, Neptune, I mean, I can see them not helping in that regard. We're trying to sort out all these thoughts. We're trying to make final decisions on things and cut away what isn't helpful. And Neptune is just making it difficult because they are fog and uncertainty and lack of clarity. At the same time, I am hoping that it's what I said earlier, insofar as Neptune is providing some level of understanding, compassion, forgiveness, Hakuna Matata, letting it go, letting it go. So hopefully coming to some decisions, hopefully not too much uncertainty and fogginess, and hopefully Neptune will just let things go. Maybe great for spiritual, putting in effort into spiritual things, making changes in spiritual routines, making changes in any of your emotional, mental, spiritual health practices. That might be a nice time to do that around June 19th, June 18th, 19th. Right now. Yeah, right now as well, this whole week. Good for all of those kind of putting effort into changing adjustments in the mental, emotional, spiritual health practices. Cool. Or artistic practices. Right. Okay, last thing I'll say before we get into Sun into Cancer. So that the Sun-Neptune square, if we think about the sun as our vitality, Neptune is kind of a physical material world vitality drain. They're not like helping anyone be Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, if you're like lifting on the 19th, if you're lifting heavy, if you're doing really physical stuff, or even just if your mind, like the brain uses so many calories when you're doing heavy mental work. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. If you're feeling really tired, if you're feeling like a little out of sorts, or just like you don't have the stamina that you usually do mentally or physically, on the 18th, 19th, like take her easy. Okay. And then Sun goes into Cancer. So very closely, we're getting very close to our full moon. At this point, the sun being in Cancer, I kind of wonder if it's going to be a bit of a relief to have these planets in Cancer. I know it's been fun to have all the benefics together in Gemini and being, ruled by Mercury there. Like right now, there's so many cool things happening. I feel like I am actually doing a very good job of tying up a lot of loose ends with Jupiter and Gemini. But I think getting out of this square and into a trine with Saturn might be kind of a relief for Sun, Venus, Mercury. They'll be in a sextile with Mars. And as much as the pace gets a little slower, things are a little less busy and active and exciting, maybe. This seems like a good time to put our head down and get to work on things or try to make some forward progress with things, especially in the maybe Cancer and Taurus parts of our chart. Um, it's just like the themes of Saturnian discipline and structure, the limits, the borders, the edges around stuff that we need sometimes. Um, Mars, our consistent motivation here in Taurus, just plodding along, the ability to just keep going with the thing. And then plugging into all of our personal planets, our preferences, our thoughts, our communication. So it just seems like a lot of good connections in the sky that we're set up with when the planets move into Cancer, that like I feel like the end of June is going to continue to be productive, continue to be forward progressing. And I also just am, I do admit, I think, Mars and Taurus, I am feeling the slowdown a little bit. When Mars was in Aries, I was going, going, going like a million miles an hour for a while there for the first time in a long time. And that actually felt really refreshing to me. I'm kind of frustrated at the slowdown. At the same time, I am watching the fact that we've got an applying Mars sextile, Mars-Saturn sextile, and Mars and Saturn in a sextile. That's great. It's like the motivation and the discipline are actually working together and I can get shit done. Um, so yeah, I like that. I like that energy quite a bit. And then, yeah, let's talk about that sextile a little bit too. We got a different sextile here. We got Mars, Mercury. That sextile is happening first. Just by sign, this just looks very constructive, productive. Serious analytical planets, energy motivation planet. Yes. Um, right now, what do we got right now exactly? Well, yeah, so starting on the 17th, let's just say starting on the 17th, now we're going to have Mercury and Mars back in communication too. So then I expect like 17th of June onward, uh, yeah, just that ability to move forward with plans, the ability to move forward with little logistical details, the ability to like put energy into communication. This is just like the perfect energy of like cultivating harmony in a relationship by doing the reps that you got to do in a relationship, like the conversations you got to have and all that stuff. This looks really good for that. When Mercury and Mars are in a sextile, I'm also not worrying very much about like sharpness, harshness. Like sometimes when we have like a Mercury Mars contact, like a conjunction or a square or an opposition, there can be some difficulty with communicating in a way that, sometimes won't be picked up as sharp or something like that. But here it's kind of like getting the best of the combination where we're getting the mental faculties and like the motivation and energy behind it. It's like having a plan and the initiative to do it and to get up off your butt. It's having words that are really precise. It's having ideas that are maybe, Mars is in Taurus, very concerned with those plans lasting. We're not just making an ephemeral plan because it sounds cool in the moment. Mars is like, yeah, and like what actions do we have to take regularly to make that plan work? So, when you put Mars and Mercury together, it operates very well as like smart, sciencey, analytical energy. I do want to acknowledge that one of my lights has gone out. Hold on 1 second. There we go. All right. So that perfects that Mars-Mercury trine. That is going to be perfecting, looks like on the 21st. Let's get precise. Yeah, on June 21st. So if you need to have any important conversations where you want to make headway on stuff, execute plans, begin doing a plan, yeah, on June 21st on Friday. That looks like that could be a really good day. Then on the 22nd, we're going to get our Capricorn full moon. And that happens, actually, my bad. It's the end of the day on the 21st. It'll be the 22nd in the rest of the world. So 22nd, or sorry, 21st, 22nd of June, Capricorn full moon. It's going to be at 8:07 p.m. Central Time on the 21st. And it's in that first decan, the Two of Pentacles decan of Capricorn, and the first decan, Two of Cups of Cancer. And this is, I mean, when I think of the first decan of Capricorn, this is where I have my sun and Mercury and Neptune and Pallas Athene, and yeah, that's everyone. They're all squished in there. The changeability. They always talk about the changeability. It's so interesting to me because like double-bodied signs, those are the changeable ones. But this first decan where you literally see the person in one of the Rider Waite Smith deck, the Pamela Coleman art, the guy juggling, the juggling of the pentacles. It's like that is exactly what's going on. And like the hills are all like up and down and like, yeah. So how are we dealing with changeable terrain? How are we dealing with balancing things in our life and doing so in a way where we can, in this place of Saturn so that they can endure? And I really like this energy in a trine with this consistent energy of Mars and Taurus. It's like wanting to put in the effort consistently. And then the moon in Capricorn is like, yeah, and let's do it because we want this thing to endure. We want this thing to last. That's what Capricorn can do. So this just seems like very world buildy energy. I know Jupiter can't see, but the rest of the chart, and even Saturn can see, and they're in charge of this lunation. So I love this whole kind of setup. It looks just like a great time. Like, usually I think of the full moon is like I'm presenting something that I've been working on over the last couple weeks, or we're coming to some kind of peak activity with something that we've maybe been working on since the beginning of June. And now we are going to be showing it, presenting it. Wherever Capricorn is, that the light is shining there. The moon's light is shining right on there. And so what is building up? What's happening that seems like it could stand the test of time? What things under this full moon are coming into view that might be for the long haul? Or, what ways can you work on certain things in your life in such a way that it can be a machine that operates, that you can let it go and eventually rest. Like getting processes going in our lives. I think this is such good energy for that. And anytime we have Capricorn and Cancer involvement, I usually go on the same riff where I try to find some balance between the two types of energy. Because when they come together, anytime oppositions, signs in opposition, anytime we can get those energies to balance, it can be so cool. And when we get the energies of Cancer and Capricorn in balance with each other, it's like all of that caring and softness and nourishment and awareness of mortality that Cancer offers that can really like honor humanity, honor what we need as people. And then Capricorn can deal with all of the dry logistics to make it work over time. So like, oh, I would love to provide nourishing meals for the elderly or something. And then Saturn, Capricorn, that influence, especially in Earth, they're like, okay, you want to do this really kind, caring, nourishing thing? You want to, or let's say you have a project that you're growing. That's what I want to grow. Okay, what time do you need? What money do you need? What skills and labor do you need to make that happen, actually? And hopefully do it in a way where we aren't going full on over Capricorn and totally forgetting about the soft, squishy needs of humanity and Cancer. But how can we keep that in mind and never forget it and always remember it when we are making these big projects or when we're going off on these big adventures to build this thing and we're on this kind of shaky terrain trying to build something that's eventually gonna stick. So yeah, humanity, soft squishiness, also the hard reality of situations. How do we hold space for both of those and not forget either one? I love, love, love. I'm going to make a note for myself. Jason Holley, who I have in my list of favorite teachers. I did their whole like myth series where they go through each of the zodiac signs and they talk about the myth for them, like a lot of the Greco-Roman myth to be specific. But I love their Capricorn one. It is so good. And it like I think Capricorn has been kind of made into this dry capitalistic goat that just is like very shrewd and Machiavellian and only cares about like the final outcome and like consequences and stuff. Um, and like, yeah, like it can be those things, Capricorn and Saturn. It's the winter in the northern hemisphere. It's death, it's loss. Um, but I love how Jason Holley talks about Capricorn insofar as it is like it was like the way that he put it, and I'm gonna probably bastardize this a little bit. So please go buy his lecture, which I will put down below after this. It's like $30. It's totally pretty reasonable. Um, but it's like Capricorn is going out and building something, whereas Cancer is like the fertile, safe marsh. But eventually we have to go outside of that, kind of almost to like in that myth, the the sea goat whose children leave him and he tries to get them to stay. But you know, they're always going to go out into the world. And also the way that Jason Holley talks about it is, you know, okay, we're going out from the safety, we're building things, and maybe even we're being in charge of civilization. They talk about the Mesopotamian god Enki in charge of fertility, tricks, and civilization. So how can we be in charge of civilization? How do we have all these people together, but not forget like that everyone needs to be included? We can't leave anyone behind. We got to take care of people, right? So that was really, it just felt so much more of like a humane version of Capricorn who can solve problems and make sure everyone is accounted for in this big, you know, structured thing of civilization. Yeah, it brought it down into more of a humane level. So I am always going to push back on modern interpretations of Capricorn. I don't like them. So I like to, and in short, if I could just give one imagery of it, it is the warm grandmother energy, grandma energy. Think about your grandma. You know, it's like, and the kind of grandma that like they've seen shit, they don't take shit, but they're also really kind and nice, and they know what to care about and they know what not to care about. And like it's a very like, you know, strong, stalwart, maybe terse sometimes, maybe even stern, but you know they love you at least. Like they make sure they know they love you. They're feeding you, they're clothing you, and heck, maybe they're not emotionally neglecting you and they are giving you emotional support because remember, this is a sea goat. It was part watery creature, mythical creature. It is more than one thing, similar to how Sagittarius is a half man, half horse. It's a centaur. And even before that, the Mesopotamians and the way that we put together images in the sky, it was like a man with a scorpion body, sorry, a horse body and a scorpion tail. It was like three things. Pa Bill Sag, Pa Bill Sag, Pa Bill Saj. I don't know how they said it. It's more than one thing. So it's not just a Machiavellian CEO. I always have to get shit done and I don't have feelings, blah, Capricorn, like, blah. No, that's not the move. So how can we lean into grandma energy this June 21st into the 22nd with all of the big things that are coming forth? How do we take care of it in a mature way, I guess? I'll leave it there. I think it's really productive and constructive. Last thing I want to look at, though, is what is the last and next aspect that the moon makes? The last aspect was a square with Saturn, and the next aspect the moon makes is an opposition with Venus. So right before the moon meets the sun, the first thing it's going to do, it was before, when the moon was in Sag, they have a serious conversation with Saturn. So I imagine maybe the day before on Thursday, on June 20th, we might bump into some kind of delay, obstacle barrier, maybe like the 19th and 20th. We're going to have some serious conversation with Saturn, or just maybe, you know, just be busy or getting things done that like they're kind of heavy or weighty or things that we're doing. And then we have the full moon. And then we meet Venus right away. So there's this conversation with Venus happening that's really important too. That has to do with this full moon. So it does, potentially end up being relational. It could be like, hey, how are my values involved in this thing that I'm building or this thing that's clearly coming up here that's important? Are my values being taken into account? Are my preferences being taken into account? Venus is our preferences. What do I actually like? What's actually yummy and sexy and fun? And can that be built into the plan? Is that, am I finding a way to balance, my big goals, all the big things I'm doing, but still enjoy it and have fun and have it feel good while I'm doing it. So that feels like what the vibe is a bit. I love to see, the ending, the aftertaste of the full moon to be more of this Venus Mercury energy. So big conversations between the Capricorn and Cancer parts of our chart. If you want more details about how this is going to affect your life personally, you're going to want to look at the houses that are in Cancer and Capricorn. So for the Sagittarius rising, that would be this maybe is a big conversation that they're going to be having with someone about money, about collaboration, how they're sharing their time, skills, talent, energy, some kind of thing like that. If this was, let's do some more for fun. If this was Cancer or Capricorn rising, this is going to be in your first and seventh. So maybe it's more about partnership and relationship. For me, Aquarius rising, maybe mine is about health and wellness and daily tasks and routines. Maybe it's about my labor. I don't have any pets right now, so that's probably not going to be relevant. Um, I wonder if it'll have to do, I've got a bunch of things, but this could have to do with large animals. My parents are about to get a bunch of cows. Mercury does. This is actually kind of like my chart too. I've got the IC in a Mercury ruled place. Mercury is the lord of my home. I'm not quite going home yet, but eh, could be large animal related for me personally. We'll see. Uh, if you're a if you're an Aries Libra rising, this is across your 10th and your 4th. That's going to be about home, private life, parents, dwelling, slash, probably more career, life path, public life. So really in these big axes of origin and where you're going, private life, public life, home, career, etc. That's how we can best use this information. So, for instance, I guess just to dig into it a little bit, like let's say dear Aries rising, maybe you've got some things that are being illuminated about your path right now, your career, your wherever you're going, wherever you're headed. And while you do that, it's also really important that you stay comfortable in your private life, in your home. Maybe the road ahead is long. We're trying to make something that's going to endure. We see the hills and valleys ahead. But in Cancer, can we remember, well, we need to water the garden before we go. We need to pack snacks. How do we make sure this journey is also one that is nurturing, nourishing? You feel supported during it. The journey itself is a supportive one, you know? Uh, all of that Cancer Capricorn energy, but across those house topics. That's how we start to synthesize what these things could be. Um, I think that's all I have to say about it. By the 23rd, we get to the 23rd, and we're going to have Mercury in their own, I think they're in their own bound by this point. Yeah. So once Mercury gets to 12 degrees, they'll be not only in their own decan, but their own bound or term. And so, for the most part, Mercury ruled things, and then Mercury ruled significations like travel, communication, music, buying, selling. By June 23rd, we got some nice weather for those Mercury things until I would say uh, the 26th. So like the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, we've got Mercury Doing pretty good for travel, trade, buying, selling, music, conversation. Fact checking. Let me check on that chat. All right. Hello, Zach. Welcome back. Yeah, grandpa energy. Yeah, we don't have to gender it, just like abuela, abuelo, like whoever. Like any supportive elder, trusted adult, mature, wise, older friend. That's kind of the Capricorn energy. Yes, like Stephen Forrest. Yes. Would June 21st make your top three best elections for the end of the month? Do I have a top three best elections for the end of the month? Gosh, I didn't think about it hard enough to give you hard and fast answers about it. But um, what I do like, what did I like? Yeah, I'm gonna do a cop out. I don't know. I'm not gonna dare say anything about elections because I get really like as soon as I start getting into electional mode, I go full Virgo. Like my South Node kicks in and I like can't not be like a perfectionist about it. So I just don't want to say anything at all. Because like elections too, the idea with elections is like, okay, we really do very intentionally and precisely pick the moment of time that would be best to do this thing. It is exactly like if I've never sailed in my life. I've been on like a canoe, but I do know that when you sail, you're supposed to pick good weather. That was anciently the deal. Like if you're taking a big trip, you got to pick the good weather. But there also is like it has to be so specific and precise because what we're trying to do is like get the very best we can out of our natal promise. So even the election itself, and Zach, I know you know this stuff, but for anyone else who's listening, it's like if you're like trying to pick an election like an umbrella of nice weather to be under, uh what's that is actually still underneath, it's usurped by your own fate. So if your fate for like let's say, I don't know, to like, let's say your fate for long distance travel. Maybe your fate for long distance travel is not great. It looks like it could be rough. Maybe you've got like Mars and something in a day chart up there. I don't know, on the ninth. Um, your natal promise is going to cap that experience at a certain level, no matter what election I give you. I cannot elect beyond your natal promise. And so when I talk about elections, like on a general monthly level, like, I mean, Chris Brennan and Lisa Scheim, they do their elections thing every month, which is excellent. And honestly, like, I kind of just want to refer people there. Like, if you're looking for really good elections, I would just subscribe to Chris Brennan and Lisa Scheim's Electional Astrology podcast. It's a great learning tool for elections. It is also, that's kind of they're doing pretty much one of the best jobs out there, I think, if you're a Hellenistic astrologer kind of person. But my point is just that I am like almost too careful about it and I need to learn how to chill out because I want to apply it to your birth chart. I don't want to talk about elections unless I can see your birth chart because I could give like what I think is a super great election, but maybe it hits your chart in a weird way. And then it's like, yeah, this is a cool drug, but it's not good for everyone, you know? So that's why like it's good to learn elections like very seriously if you're going to mess with it and not just like, I don't know, look for a lunar benefic enclosure and hope for the best. That's still a good place to start. That's still better than nothing. But uh anyway, there was something in my notes though that I want to go back to because it was kind of nice. Mm. Yeah, I think the thing that I really liked about the full moon, I think that it was just that we've got these nice sextiles and trines happening between all the personal planets. So, the sun and Venus and Mercury, they're getting sextiles and trines from Saturn and Mars. They're either their harm is very mitigated or we're making lemonade out of lemons with them. So I like that a lot. And the moon is just plugging right in to that very constructive energy. And this is also all kind of across air and water. And so I don't think it's going to be like this full moon doesn't feel as busy to me in terms of speaking and sharing and external stuff. And, of course, during full moons, people are just out doing stuff more. But this does feel like, just slower, more quiet, private, like constructive energy. And I like that. So maybe, yeah, maybe I'd put it as one of my top three, but I just don't know enough to answer that question well. By the 24th, Venus is now applying to a sextile with Mars. This just seems kind of fun. I don't know. I like this. You know, for the most part, Mars and Taurus, they're again, they're just not quite paced the way that Mars would like. Mars would like to go faster, but all the people who Mars is working with, they're also at this slower pace. Saturn is at a slower pace. Sun, Venus, Mercury are at a slower pace. So Mars, to put our energy and our drive into all these areas of life, it's like it's gelling and it's working because we're all kind of on the same page in terms of pacing. We're all kind of slowed down a little bit. So again, just have to take my word for it. It looks functional. And that's, again, we're working on like the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd of June. Looks pretty good. Nothing I'm concerned about. Venus is going to be applying to a sextile with Mars. That, now we're putting, it's very passionate, it's sexy, it's fun. This might be a good day for, if you've got an established partner. I don't know how I feel about it for first dates. I don't know how I feel about like the 21st, 22nd for initiating a new relationship. That being said, if you're already in one, this could be just like such a nice, sexy, fun time. I don't know. Maybe I should take that back. Maybe this is fine for first dates, Um, chart specific. Take that with a handful of salt. Not for every chart, but this just looks like the most cuddly date night. Like just like when I put Venus and Mars together, it can be very sexy and yummy and passionate. And if we're not like making art or just enjoying other people's art or, putting effort into something pleasurable, just putting effort into pleasure, if we're not doing that like just in a more neutral way, we can also be doing that in just a very literal sexual way. So I'll take it. And honestly, like this energy was probably, the 17th of June. That's when it really gets going. So, look for the comfy, sexy, fun energy, I guess, with that Mars Venus sextile from June 17th until, I mean, we could say just sign based like all of June, the rest of June, but it starts to wane, let's just say by like, yeah, pretty much the rest of June. It starts to wane like in early July. Um, so that's fun. That's a fun note. Very good. I haven't really given too many mind your own business days, which is kind of interesting. Because even like the malefic enclosure of the moon, that didn't bother me. This T-square, that one didn't bother me that much. I mean, potentially like June 24th, we're just gonna have the moon with square with Uranus, Mars, Pluto, just all up in there. Yeah, June 24th, exercise caution a little bit with just generally. Maybe a mind your own business day on the 24th. Expect the unexpected on the 25th. Then moon is going to go in a square with Uranus. I was trying to decide when I should do my July forecast, and I chose not to do it on Tuesday evening on the 25th because I didn't want to deal with the moon running into a square with Uranus. I figured that would be some kind of interruption, or I just wouldn't be in a good place to be doing it. This is actually when I personally am going to be interrupting my normally scheduled program to go on a vacation, which I have not. I don't remember the last time I took like a week off. They really don't. And this is so I saw this and I was like, oh, the sky looks like I should be interrupting something at this point. So I'm going to be interrupting my home and my living situation and myself and my general circumstances to go on a vacation. What I'm not going to try to do is all the stuff I normally do. So Tuesday night on the 25th of June, you might have to be, if you're in Central, this is going to be earlier in the day, the more global west you are, like again, like Hawaii, I guess, more in your afternoon. This will be into Wednesday. The moon squaring Uranus, interruptions, disruptions. That's more into Wednesday, the 26th of June, the further global east you are. So we're just going to have to be flexible on Tuesday, Wednesday. And that's after that full moon. So we have the full moon on 21st, 22nd. And then we're coming off of that. And then disruptions, interruptions potentially on the 25th, 26th. Then that Venus-Mars sextile will finally perfect on the 28th. So that's, remember, sexy, funny, fun, yummy. Maybe it's funny. I always kind of go back and forth between who I think the funny planets are. I think it's probably Jupiter and Mercury. I feel like they have all the jokes. It's got to be Mercury. They're the trickster, right? Maybe it'll be fun too in that way. And then we get our Saturn stationing. Let me see if I'm missing anything else. Yeah, I'm gonna back up. Before that, so that I mentioned, okay, the 25th, 26th, we get the moon square Uranus, depending on where you are in the globe. Then on the 26th and the 27th, we have a benefic enclosure of the moon directly followed by a malefic enclosure of the moon. So I think the 26th and 27th are going to be a little bit of a roller coaster potentially. I'm going to give you the exact times here. So on June 26th, when the moon gets to 7 of Pisces, approximately. So the moon is going to be meeting Jupiter by a square. And then after that, it's going to travel and meet a trine with Venus. So on June 26th, there's going to be several hours, particularly between about, is that correct? Yes, that's correct. Between about 1:26 p.m. Central Time on the 26th of June at 1:26 p.m. And that benefic enclosure, the nice weather, is all afternoon into the evening. And that is going to end when the moon gets to 12 degrees. And we're looking at, oh, I'm so bad with military time. What's 12 minus 3? 9. 9:32 p.m. So it's pretty much all day. If you are in Europe, or if you're in Africa, you're going to be probably asleep for the benefic enclosure. This will be, if you're more like global east, this is going to be very early on the 27th. Then after that, after the moon spends time with Jupiter and Venus, then they're going to spend time with Mars and Saturn right after that. They're going to meet Mars by a sextile and then Saturn by a conjunction. Now, again, this is not the worst lunar malefic enclosure. The moon meets Saturn by conjunction once a month. It is fine. And the moon meeting Mars by a sextile and the moon being in that overcoming position. This is pretty weak. This is pretty weak for Mars doing any kind of irritation. This actually looks kind of constructive Again, it's that Mars motivation, Mars energy with Saturn, discipline, Saturn. Yes, I see the limitations and I'm going to work around them anyway. Yes, I see the boundaries, the barriers, and so I'm going to make my plan accordingly. And it's this sextile energy of making it work, bringing things together to make them work. So I don't actually dislike this. I rarely say that about a malefic enclosure of the moon. It might not be comfortable, but I don't think it's like a total time to not do stuff. I mean, don't start anything like during this. Please don't start anything. Oh, and let me get the exact times for those. That is going to be Central Time now, 11:25 p.m. on the 26th. So really late into the morning at 9:56 in the morning on the 27th. So, yeah, just know that 26th, 27th starts a little nicer, ends a little more sour, or starts a little more light, ends a little bit more serious. 26th, 27th. Cool, cool, cool. Then we get to the 28th. And we get Mercury finally getting to be far enough away from the sun for it to be seen in the evening sky. So now Mercury is making their appearance depending on your place on the world and your atmosphere and your horizon. They're going to start rising in the evening sky. So now, end of June, more into July, Mercury ruled topics might be getting more visible, apparent, loud, understood. So look at whatever Mercury rules. So for this theoretical Pisces rising person, maybe end of June and July, Mercury ruled topics like their seventh house of partnership and their fourth house of home and family. Maybe those topics are getting louder. Mercury's more visible, direct. Mercury is going to be doing their stuff loudly, functionally, more effectively. Um, Not usually right. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do sometimes see it at like that. And that is the most potent moment when we're first seeing a planet arise out of the beams of the sun after they've been hidden for so many days or weeks or, however long it's been. It's kind of a big deal when they make their appearance. And so Mercury, news, information, details, communications. Now, if you've been waiting at this point throughout June, in July, I would expect us to be getting the news, getting the information, all of the Mercury things coming in. If you're a musician and you've been working on the song in private, maybe now you're going to be more public about it and sharing it with friends and stuff. If you're a writer and you've been writing stuff, similarly, maybe you'll be sharing it a bit more freely in July. So one possibility. And then I guess the last thing I'll say too about the 28th, Mercury is going to be in a square with Cancer. So that's kind of interesting too. It's like Mercury is making their evening appearance in the sky. The Lord of saying stuff, Mercury. And they're getting a square here from Chiron. And so as always, this can be ouchies, wounds. It can also be healing around those wounds. So, the 28th, 29th of June, I would say 27th, 28th, 29th. Things could be tender. If there's tender discussions, tender people, just be extra careful and kind and all that stuff because we can say things and sometimes it will land in a way we didn't intend. Or maybe we'll hear something that is triggering. We will hear something that could potentially land icky, and we might have to deal with that. So just know that we can be a little tender, I think, on June 27th, 28th, 29th. So just be extra nice to each other and yourselves. And yeah, one last, looks like a little benefic enclosure on the 28th into the 29th. When the moon is in Aries, you're going to be having a little sextile with Jupiter and then a square with Venus. So that's going to be on the 28th from 5:02 p.m. throughout the evening until 5:15 in the morning on the 29th. So that's going to be the Friday evening, Friday night. looks good. Friday night looks good. On the 28th, we get a lunar benefic enclosure. Um, I know Mercury is with Chiron, so maybe maybe this can be a little bit of help with if there are some Mercury Chiron ouchy things or wounds or even healings that are happening that can be kind of difficult on their own. The moon being in good shape really helps us out with that. And if you are more globally east, so that's Friday night for me. So that's going to be more early Saturday into Saturday afternoon. The further global east you get, that's going to be your nice lunar enclosure. Uh, last thing, last thing. Nope, second to last thing. Saturn stations retrograde on the 29th. We pretty much already talked about it. Uh, there it is. Saturn stationing at 19 degrees, 25 arc minutes. At this time, Jupiter, of course, can see them and provide guidance and support if needed. I would say, again, look to the Saturn ruled house topics, look to the Pisces house topics to see where Saturn might be loud for you. Yeah, I really did talk about all of that already, really at the beginning. So look at the timestamps, it's back there. And then the actually last thing of the month I wanted to mention, Moon and Venus end up in a mutual reception on the 30th. So we get Moon going into Taurus. And when the Moon is in Taurus, it will be with Mars, but it also is going to be in this mutual reception with Venus. So Sunday on the 30th, this also looks like kind of a nice day too. I think there might be some little notes of frustration on the 30th, a little tension here and there. Mars is around, but I do think that the Venus Moon mutual reception where they're in each other's signs are really helping to smooth out anything Mars or Uranus might want to do. So at the very least on the 30th, if you're not getting that kind of juicy, nice weather from the mutual reception, it might maybe be something protective, something more stabilizing and otherwise difficulty or chaos. If you're not having difficulty or chaos, hopefully the 30th on the Sunday is a really nice day. That's what I have for you. I'm going to check in with the chat, see what people are saying. If anyone has any things I missed or they wanted to talk about, yeah, it doesn't look like it. Last call. And thank you so much, everyone, for all your contributions. If you got any help out of this, please hit the like button. If you want to keep up with it, hit the subscribe button. I think that's all I have. Announcements. I am booked out not too long, not too far ahead. There's some spots left in June, but I am going to be going away for the pretty much last week of June. And I might be gone a little bit in July. In the beginning, I'm going to be gone the last week of July. So I'm taking another vacation then. Vacation. I'm going to a music festival. I don't know how much rest I'm actually going to get, but it should be fun. And it is good for me. I'm such a damn hermit. I got to like make myself do other stuff so I don't turn into a weirdo. Like I need to go out in the world and experience things that are not this so I don't turn into a weirdo. So I'm going to go do that. So book me now because I think July is going to get a little hairy. If you want a discount code, you can use Astrology Podcast. That's going to get you a 10% off discount on any of my services in affiliation with Chris Brennan's referral list. I don't think I have any running right now. I think the ones I had expired, but I'm about to put out a newsletter and I'm going to have another set of discounts for something on there. So definitely sign up there. I did some rising sign horoscopes for Jupiter and Gemini. Those are on my YouTube page here. Definitely check those out. It's a giant video, but it is time stamped and it's free. It's kind of my B squad material, though. I do have a better, way better version of it that is behind a paywall. It is $15 on Podia for my good Jupiter and Gemini lecture. I'm not going to explain why I have two. It was an accident. I explained it at some other point. Um, that going on. I've got the Kaylee review article that's out, that's available for purchase below. I actually read it. It was really, really good. I already put it on my desk, but I was learning the days of the moon. Let me actually grab it because it was so dang good. It took me a little while to read it. But yeah, The Days of the Moon by William Dearday. Awesome article. I was applying the days of the moon to like so many charts all week. Um, Such a good little book. And then I did want to share too. I was taking this class. Um, from Cameron Cassidy of Omega Astrology. This is his website. Um, None of these people I'm talking about are friends of the show either. They didn't put me up to this. This is all just stuff I get excited about that I like to share. I just finished today the Celestial Mechanics circles and cycles, cycles and circles. This was like a 3.5 hour class that was so good. And my brain hurts so bad because it was so much stuff. It was amazing. But it was all about the great circles that, like the equator and the meridian and the prime vertical and all of those, and how they all get cut up and divided, right? And all of the astronomy behind this very 2D, two-dimensional astrology that we're doing. So I just want to throw this out there that this class is amazing. It was so awesome. It took me a couple weeks to get through it like really well, and re-listening and re-listening and re-watching so I could kind of really integrate it. But yeah, I just want to point that out as a really good one. It was kind of my side quest in doing a chart calculations class. Um, Saturn is in my second house, and I am shoring up my skills and talents. That's what I'm doing with Saturn in my second. I'm doing all of the skills and talents development I feel insecure about, which includes my inability to calculate a chart by hand. I mean, at least in case the apocalypse happens, right? So, anyway, take that spheres class is really good, especially if you want to learn how to calculate charts by hand. It felt like the perfect side quest from the chart calculations class that I'm doing. So if you're kind of in that place too, I just want to throw that out as like, I'm loving it. And yeah, I just want to share that. I think that's it. I hope everyone has a really good month. We will be back here. I actually did plan ahead. It's going to be early. I'm going to try to do these a little earlier now. I've been kind of flying by the seat of my pants. The next one is going to be July 22nd at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't mean to keep doing them this late. Sometimes I do these in the afternoon. It just ends up how it goes sometimes. So again, we'll be here again June 22nd at 7 p.m. And then that'll be for July. And then I have my next office hour, which is kind of my question and response time for astrology. That's going to be on July 11th on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. I do those Q&As, Q&Rs once a month. It's every second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Central Time. So that's it. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a really good rest of your June, and I hope your July entrance goes great if I don't speak to you before then. But take care.